February 24th, 2022. That's the day hell broke loose on Earth when the full-scale war between Russia and Ukraine sprang to life. Since then, we've witnessed massive support in their fight for freedom from all across the world. And while freedom for the people of Ukraine is and will remain the most crucial reason to support Ukraine, there is more than one reason to support this troubled nation. And as befits my channel, I'm talking about Ukraine's shockingly important role in the automotive industry. Hello people of the internet, I'm Nico, a person who knows precisely 4 Ukrainian words, and this is the shockingly important role of Ukraine in the automotive industry. And if you're interested in donating to help Ukraine, I'll talk about that at the end of this video. Now, it may surprise you to know that Ukraine even has a role in the automotive industry since their top 3 exports are seed oils, corn, and wheat. But as I recently found out, Ukraine really does have a very important role in the automotive industry and actually has a bit of a history making cars. Back when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, their automotive industry cranked out a lot of cars. Not good ones, but a lot of them. If you know of the Yugo or the Trabant from when East Germany was a thing, then you're in the right ballpark. These cars built by ZAZ were small, cheap, had no real luxuries, and at best served the purpose of getting from home to work and then back again. Aside from the cheap ZAZ passenger cars, there were also LUAZ vehicles which mostly consisted of small off-roaders, some of which were amphibious. I'm not kidding, Ukraine made amphibious off-roaders. Ukraine also made a lot of buses and trucks, with the buses being made under the LAZ banner and the trucks being made under the KRAZ banner. Don't ask me why they named the different vehicle types Zaz, Luaz, Laz, and Kraz, because I don't know either. Most of the vehicles made in Ukraine were commercial or military vehicles. There wasn't and still isn't much of an automotive industry in the form of assembling cars to be sold to the general public. Instead, they play a big role as parts suppliers to the big companies we know today. Ukraine today hosts more than 20 companies in the automotive industry and is home to 38 factories, employing some 60,000 people. Many of those factories produce wiring harnesses, and unfortunately for those who rely on Ukraine for wiring harnesses, they are absolutely crucial in making a car. Now, this doesn't have as drastic of an effect on the US as it does on Europe, but I'll get to the things we rely on Ukraine for in a sec. First, we focus on Europe. Across the pond, there are dozens of car companies with almost 300 factories operating today. Not all of these factories are assembling cars, but many of them do, and Ukraine supplies 7% of all those wiring harnesses that the factories need. So when such a substantial supply of wiring harnesses suddenly gets cut short, all of Europe is left scrambling to the ends of the earth to find enough wiring harnesses. An automotive analyst at Wells Fargo reported that losing these imported wiring harnesses from Ukraine could lead to a loss of 700,000 vehicles in a 6-month span. The shortage of wiring harnesses is so bad that the CEO of Volkswagen admitted that it has become a larger problem than the shortage of semiconductors. Obviously, this heavily affects all companies in Europe and Germany especially, and I promise I'll still get to the implications this has on the US, but give me a sec longer because I still need to talk about semiconductors. Now, Ukraine does not produce semiconductors. That market is still dominated by Taiwan. But Ukraine and Russia too produce a lot of materials needed to make semiconductors. 2 of the key materials needed are neon and palladium. Russia produces roughly 40% of the world's supply of palladium, and Ukraine produces roughly 75% of the world's supply of neon. And if you've been keeping up with the struggles of the automotive industry since the pandemic started, you'll know that the shortage in semiconductors is largely responsible for the limited supply in new vehicles made, and with that the steep increase in used car prices. And now with Russia and Ukraine at each other's throats, the key materials for semiconductors are more limited than ever. Okay, with all that in mind, now we can get to how much this affects us. Here in the US, we produce a lot of our own cars, but cars still make up the largest sector of all imports to the US. Japan is the largest exporter, followed by Canada, Mexico, and then South Korea. All of these aren't really affected by the shortage of wiring harnesses from Ukraine, but obviously still affected by the chip shortage. The next biggest exporter of cars to the US is my home of Germany, making up 10.5% of all the cars we import. That's just over $15 billion worth of cars affected by both the wiring harness shortage and the chip shortage. Then if you account for all the other European countries that we import from, you're looking at $33 billion worth of cars affected by Ukraine's situation. But that's not all. Ukraine also exports directly to the US. Not much, relatively speaking. Ukraine only exports around $50 billion worth of goods around the world, with around $1 billion worth of goods ending up here. To put it another way, the amount of goods Ukraine exports to us is about the same as Marvel spent on making Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. So Ukraine has a lot more to lose than we do if there were no more trade, but the things they export are still very important. The number one most exported item from Ukraine to the US is pig iron at a whopping 48.6%. And if you don't know, pig iron is used for making steel, the most crucial material for making cars. Ukraine also exports iron ore and various other steel products, also things needed for car production. So now that you know just how much we rely on Ukraine, and with the obvious part of our human desire to want to help others, I want to talk about how you can help Ukraine in their fight for freedom. And yes, before you comment, I know that there are good and bad charities, but my best friend who is Ukrainian made a list of all the best places to donate so you don't have to worry about your money going to waste. And also I want to say I'm not sponsored by any of these charities. To help civilians still in Ukraine, there are two that I will recommend. The first being Nova Ukraine. They have a breakdown on their website of how much money goes to what, most of it being medical supplies and food, and some going to refugees and rebuilding infrastructure. There's a link in the description below if you're interested in donating. The charity I have personally donated to is Project Hope. You can donate to many different causes on their website, including hurricane victims in Florida and of course helping Ukraine. I'll have a link to their homepage as well as a direct link to their page to help Ukraine in the description below. If you want to help Ukraine's armed forces directly, then you can go to the National Bank of Ukraine's website to donate. You can also help by raising awareness and writing to senators and other government officials. All links and contact info are in the description below. I hope that you will join me in supporting Ukraine in their battle for freedom. All links to the charities, the National Bank of Ukraine, and contact info to government officials are in the description below. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Until next time, people of the internet, let me get this right. Slava Ukraini!